Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Alice and today I have these Staedler watercolor pencils that I bought a while back that I'm going to play around with and review for you guys. So this is a 24 set of the Staedler watercolor pencils, and the thing that intrigued me about these was that they're triangular. It advertises them as having this triangular barrel, which is supposed to make them easy to grip, ergonomic, and also so they don't roll off the table like they always do, like every other pencil that I have. So this is what they look like. I got a 24 set. I got these, I think, from Michael's a while back. They're pretty affordable. Right now I can find them on Michael's for $19.99, and then they also have like a 20% off code for the 24 pack, and then the 12 pack is like $7 or something like that on Amazon. This is what they look like. As you can see, they weren't really sharpened properly, kind of weird. A lot of them had like the wood just kind of sticking out over the lead, and that was kind of annoying, but we'll see how they go, I guess. So the first thing I did was to start by making swatches. I wanted to see how these performed, what the colors were like, how they were going to blend out, all of that good stuff. Especially with watercolor pencils, there's so many different things that can come into play. They need to be pigmented. They need to blend out well. They need to have a good formula. Like, there's a lot of different things that can come into play with watercolor pencils. So swatches are really, really helpful, especially if you're getting used to or trying any new supply. You can really figure out the colors and the consistency of the supply itself. So like I said, this set has 24 colors, but there's not as much other information out there that I can find. All it says on all of the websites I can find, Staedler, Michael's, Dick Blick, Amazon, literally everything that I can find is that it's 24 pencils, they're water soluble, it has a 2.9 millimeter color core. It says these brilliant colors are easy to blend. You can create watercolor washes with a wet brush. They have an ergonomic triangular barrel and are easy to grip for hours of coloring and design. So it doesn't really say anything about the pigment or anything like that, unfortunately, that I can find. So I'm just gonna go entirely off my own impressions and using these. So as you can see, the swatch page, I've added some water to, and we're getting some pretty decent blending. First thing I was like kind of pleasantly surprised was it did blend out way more than I thought it was going to. I really thought that you were gonna see a lot of the texture on the page of where I put it down, but I went and sharpened one of them, and you can see how much I had to sharpen it to get it to sharpen without breaking, because I was trying to get rid of that little like part where the wood went up. And yeah, I had to sharpen it a lot to get it to sharpen without breaking. I did find they broke kind of easily. So that was one of my first complaints, was just like the overall quality of the actual product itself. Not the way the product applied or is used, but the actual pencil, the wood that's used for the pencil, the way they're sharpened, the lead, whether it's going to break or not, that kind of thing felt a little bit fragile to me, a little bit lower quality. But the actual product itself, not bad. I'm not mad at it. So I started out, well, first of all, I made a bit of a mistake, which is that I used a paper that I wasn't actually familiar with, which was stupid. I don't know why I did that. I was like, I know this brand. I've heard of this paper. It'll be fine. This is a good quality paper, whatever. The paper was fine. It was good quality, but it worked differently than a lot of other papers I've used. It was very absorbent, super cottony, super soft, really kept it wet for a long time. And because of that, it was just a little different to use with the watercolor pencil. And I was like, why didn't I do this on something that I was more familiar with? But because I had a pretty good experience, even with the paper that I wasn't familiar with, I didn't like redo it with a paper that I am more familiar with. But I am interested to try these on a paper that I know just a little bit more well. For this piece, I wanted to do something that I could show off and use as many colors as possible. So I decided to do this like desert scene. I did a quick sketch in the light gray because, as you saw in the swatches, the light gray really blended out to almost nothing. So I thought that would be a good thing to do the underpainting in. But I didn't really consider the fact that once I had put that first layer of watercolor pencil on and sprayed it and let it kind of blend out, that was going to erase all of those details that I'd drawn with watercolor pencil. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Like, I normally sketch in tritones because of that. Yet for some reason, the idea that that was just going to be erased when I painted on top of it had just completely flown out of my brain. It was just like, no, it's fine. You're fine. So basically, I just had to keep redrawing in things. And so the cacti move around quite a bit. But I like to use watercolor pencils in layers. You don't want to layer too much with watercolor pencils. There's only so much that you can build up the layers, but obviously, since I'm trying some, I do want to see how much I can layer, how they're going to work on top of each other. So I start after that little sketch. I did a kind of loose array of all the colors. I set out the color scheme, kind of got everything where I wanted it to be, and as you can see, I sprayed it with some water. That's really going to soften it out, and then I used the brush to kind of go through and blend everything together. And then I did that a second time once it was dry, and that's what you see me doing right now. Is that second time I went in and I built up a lot more layers, a lot more colors, really starting to try to get some more definition in there with where the shading is going to be, and getting more complex colors in there, both in like the road in the front, through the like kind of sand and dirt area, and in the sky as well. So I really wanted to play around with those colors and create something really interesting and layer the colors and see what I could do. And I thought they layered really nicely. I was able to continually build up the colors on top of one another to get some really nice, like naturalistic tones. I also did feel like the colors were pretty bright. Like any watercolor, they are going to dry down to be more dull than when they are wet when you first apply them. One thing that I have found is if you want to, if you varnish your work after, if you're using watercolor, you need to use a spray varnish. Do not use a varnish that you paint over your watercolor. You will smudge the watercolor because it will activate it. But you do want to, if you want to varnish it, use like a spray varnish, and that will really bring out those colors of any of your watercolor piece because it will imitate that wet look. So it will really bring out that luminance and that reflection. That's something I've been really into recently. But obviously it does change the finish of your piece. It's going to make it shiny. If that's something you don't like, that's something to consider. But that's something that I find brings out some colors even more. But once it's dry, I mean, I'm looking at the piece right now, and I would say that it's still pretty vibrant. I'm really happy with some of the blues and purples, especially in the sky. And I'm also quite happy with a lot of the shadows and how the shadows came out. And I was able to just build up a lot with these purples and these blues and the pinks, and mix the pinks and the blues together to create some more complex shadows within that. I also tried to mix in a lot of the reds and yellows so that the whole place looked really sun-kissed. When you're doing something that has this strong light, you have to remember that the shadows are going to be very cool as well, because you really have that contrast. You're trying to create that contrast. So even though I had the center of the page really bright yellow and warm and orange, I made sure to keep those shadows really cool, not just purple, but adding in a lot of blue as well. So that's something that I also recommend. When I'm applying watercolor pencil, I do have a couple tutorials about how I use watercolor pencil that I will link in the description box below if you're interested in learning more. But some quick tips that I have for using watercolor pencil if you're new to it or if you don't really know how to use it. Start by applying where the lightest color is going to be. So if you're blending, like for example with the sky, from that yellow sun in the center out to the darker edges of the sky, you want to start with the center where that yellow sun is. The reason being, you're going to have the most water on your brush when you start. When you start with the most water, that's going to be the lightest part. There's going to be the most water. It's going to push away the color. So what you want to do is you want to start in the lightest area and push into the darker area. And you'll see me doing that throughout the entire piece. For example, right now I'm starting in the center, the lighter area, and I'm moving into that shadow, and I'm moving up towards the darkest area of the shadow, which is like where it meets the rock, or in the road where it meets the edge of the dirt. So you want to push towards the shadow, and that way you're pushing all of the pigment towards that darker area and not towards the lighter area, and that way you're going to get a nice smooth clean blend. Also, when you're layering watercolor pencil, make sure that your previous layer is 100% dry. When you start drawing it on, it feels kind of soft, it's too wet, it's not dry enough. It might feel dry, but it's not. Dry it some more. Use a hair dryer, it'll really help. And that's going to really help you too. And there's only so much that you can layer. I layered about 3 times. At this point, I hit the point where the water was going to take off the paint underneath. That's just how it works. That's how watercolor works. That's how watercolor pencil works. So at this point, I was pretty happy with it overall anyway. So I decided to go in with some finishing touches, and I used the tritones. I love tritone colored pencils, and I'm a huge fan of mixed media. I think it's important to use what tools work for you and are most efficient, not just confine yourself to one specific tool just for like the sake of purity. So after I did this, I went with those tritones, which are these beautiful kind of mixed toned color pencils, and they're perfect for landscapes and things like this because you can create so much little like variation in the colors because of the way that they are modeled. And I use that to really darken some of the shadows, to get some more bright highlights in there on some darker areas, to add more definition and sharpness to the edge of the cacti and the plants, and just to overall add in some finishing details. I also went in and added like some little scrub brush on the ground a little bit later, and just kind of use that to overall finish the whole thing. I also went in with some white pen and some gold gel pen just to add some final details and a little bit more of that sun-kissed look. I love using a gold gel pen in like sunset paintings to kind of add a little vibe of like the sun glimmering off things. So you'll see me do that. And that is pretty much it. I didn't mind these watercolor pencils. I don't know how much I've talked about the watercolor pencils. This is supposed to be a review, and I don't know how much I've reviewed them. But I think that they're decent. Like, honestly, I think, I mentioned this before. I think that the quality of the actual pencil itself is questionable. It's a little questionable. I'm not going to lie. The wood is a little cheap. I do like the fact that they're triangular. They didn't roll off my desk, which was very, very nice. But the actual pigment themselves, they're not bad. They blend out a lot smoother than the Derwent, for sure. Are they my new favorite watercolor pencils? No, they're not. I still prefer the Albrecht Dürer ones and the Arteza woodless watercolor pencils. Would I recommend these to a beginner, to someone that's starting watercolor pencils? Yes, I absolutely would. I think this is a great and really affordable recommendation for anyone that's starting watercolor pencils and wants to learn more about them, especially if you can't get the woodless watercolor pencils. I know these are available in Michael's and in a lot of other stores, so I would definitely pick these over the Derwent ones if you're looking to try watercolor pencils at an affordable price. Definitely pick them up. I have to say I was really pleasantly surprised by these. I really didn't think I was going to like them. So I'm really happy that I got to try them and hopefully provide you guys with a good recommendation for someone who wants to try watercolor pencils. I hope that you guys liked this video and that you liked the artwork that I made. Thanks so much for watching, and definitely check out my Twitch channel, www.twitch.tv/helloalice. It's totally free, and I stream Thursday through Monday. It's a great time. Please come hang out with us, and I will see you in my next video, which I'm actually going to aim to go up on Saturdays, not Fridays. It's just going to work a little bit better for my schedule. So thank you guys for hanging out with me, and I love you, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye, guys.